Well, Nebraska will be on their search for their fourth athletic director in 13 years as Trev Alberts departed the program. Emotions been running high this week, and Matt Rhule gave a little bit of a speech of a rallying cry, if you will, of defiance and just kind of his thoughts on the whole situation and confirming what I believe to be true from the start, that he was going to stay no matter what. Um, but I will get into a little bit of the wrapping up of the whole Trev Albert situation, touch on what Matt Rhule said in today's news conference, and just break that down a little bit in detail with my thoughts. And but first things first, if you're new here, my name is Justin Adams. I'm a host here at Nebraska Football, the voice of college football. If you like what we're doing here, please consider liking and subscribing. And I do want to apologize to everybody for the content this week. I was having computer issues. My screens were messed up. The issue I was having on the live stream before continued. So I was able to get them resolved, and I'm leaving. I'm trying to prepare for a wedding in Texas, and I leave in 2 days. So I've been trying to work as hard as I can around it. And, I promised a video, so I'll put this one out, and then we'll be back on track for our live stream on tomorrow. So let's just, getting into the Trev Albert situation. And the last time I spoke on this on here was on the live stream Tuesday. So at that point, that was before Trev had left. The rumors were coming out about, the issues within the organization, the board of regents, et cetera, et cetera. And so, now that, this has been beaten to death, so I won't spend too terribly much time on it. But during that whole situation, Husker fans had every right to, react the way they did in terms of, anger and vitriol, et cetera, because the way Trev did, went about this was not the best way. It was not ideal. He really did leave a lot of questions, wasn't very transparent or forthcoming, and his statement via email just seemed a little bit disrespectful for somebody who's supposed to care so much about the athletic department in the university, as somebody who has their name in the stadium. But, you know, I put out a tweet that day or that night about, I don't think right now the fans should be going after Trev. At that time, I firmly believe that, based on everything that we heard and was confirmed by a lot of sources, that the issue was still within the Board of Regents. And I'm not saying that that means you can't be mad at Trev. You can't throw these things at Trev. What I was saying, and what I still believe to be true, is this is an opportunity right here that was presented for us to really see what the root of the issue could be. Because again, you've lost, a president, athletic director, et cetera. So there is something there that is the common denominator that isn't these guys leaving. There's something there within the Board of Regents. And when they talk about political issues, they don't mean, government politics. They mean, political issues in terms of Trev Alberts maybe wants funding for XYZ. There's no telling what those things were. But what this situation did is it exposed a weakness, and it exposed something that is an issue within the athletic department. What Trev Alberts did, in my opinion, was gave them an opportunity to see if they would blink, and they didn't. So, he departed. I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive, though. I firmly believe that what our weaponized, fan base and usage should have been with that passion was to really go after the Board of Regents in that moment. Because the way I saw it is we have the rest of the future to be upset with Trev Alberts. We don't have to do it right in this moment. We can instead push that energy towards, put the target on the back of the people it needs to be on, because going after Trev and putting the target on his back essentially diverts, the rush of people that we could have calling and putting that effort into going after the Board of Regents while we have an opportunity before the athletic director is hired, et cetera. One of those things is time sensitive. The other one really isn't. We have all the time in the world to hate Trev. The basketball gods or the selection committee lined it up the way they did for a reason. So we already got a chance at revenge. Chris Kaborik is in place, and he's beloved by the fan base, the athletic department, and the university as a whole. So the thing it wasn't the end of the world. And the reason it wasn't the end of the world was because when Trev came into the athletic department, it was in shambles, right? He did put a lot of good things in motion to happen. And he's the reason for, a lot of the good happening right now. And I don't think that we should lose sight of that just on the way he departed, because there's been worse situations where people have come in and, you know, left it awry, and to put it nicely. And so, like, he left the athletic department in good shape. Again, the way he went about it was a little, seemed like a traitor type of move, betrayal. But at the end of the day, we still can be upset about that and also agree that he did a lot of good here. And he left the athletic department in a positive direction, which Rule reiterated today. And that was just my point on it. Was just, let's focus on what is being exposed as a big issue right now within, above the athletic department's, level in those board of regents, and figure that out. So that way, hiring a president, hiring the next athletic director, they're going to be here. We're not going to run into the same issue. Again, multiple people have left. So hopefully we'll start to see more of this come out. I wish Trev would have put a little bit more out there about it. But over the last day or so, Trev's been very tone deaf with all of this, just the tweets he's putting out there, and, that type of stuff. Like, I don't understand that. But again, you know, we can go after Trev, but make sure that we're also putting the same energy into trying to fix the root problem in the core of the issue within the Board of Regents. So now I'll move on to a little bit of kind of what Rule went over today, and we'll talk a little bit more about the spring ball aspect of it in tomorrow's live stream. I'll break that a little bit more down in detail as we prep for spring. But he did mention the unity of the state and with the athletic department. Rule mentioned how, specifically Chris Kaborik, he was pleased with his professionalism, the way he connected with coaches quickly, reached out to people. And also that, the governor reached out as well, which meant a lot to him to know that people at the top of the state, have his back and really care about the university. And it's one of those things where Rule, I never thought was going to leave, because Rule has said numerous times, he's talked about the reasons he's here. And Trev Alberts is not the main reason he's here. In all those conversations, he talks about family, he talks about environment, he talks about, a place that he wants to build, his family and raise his kids. And so there's a lot more to what Rule wants in a place than, just leaving for the next check or anything like that. Rule is very much a man of his convictions and his beliefs. And, he believes very much in faith and family. And so he's gonna stick to why he's here. And I promise you, Matt Rule is not the type of person that would just come to a place because of an athletic director. That's not how this works. And there was a good relationship there, but there can be a good relationship with the next guy. There's going to be a good relationship with the next, president, athletic director that comes in here. So, but getting into a little more of what he talked about, he talked about Dennis being, kind of what's good about the university. Talking about Dennis LeBlanc, by the way, sorry, the interim athletic director, and what he's, what's great about college athletics, and that he cares about the student athletes, and that's in quotes. What's great about college athletic, cares about the student athletes, and works long hours solely because he cares about the kids. So, he believes that, in what Dennis is doing, in the short amount of time he's been there, or in the time he was working as sport administrator, that a lot of the values that he holds, true to himself, with caring about the student athletes first and foremost, he has that in kind of alignment with Dennis LeBlanc. And so, he's very much, again, a man of his beliefs. And so having somebody who aligns well with not only Matt Rule, but the rest of the coaches as well, is going to be very important. And I do think that they will definitely have a say in who comes on as the next athletic director potentially, and hopefully that would make the most sense, of course, because right now the coaches in place are very good. It was one of those things where it's like everything was going right, and this Trev stuff happened just out of the blue. But let's not lose sight of the fact that everything is still going right. Nothing has changed with the teams. No coaches have left. Players haven't left. This is something that with the right, hire that they can get in there, and they can run this thing just as, you know, as it was being run before, maybe better. And what Rhule talked about that he wants, is and an athletic director is, he really wants somebody who's going to be able to look into the future. He mentioned the guys 20 years ago, and even beyond that, the Osborns, the Devaney's, et cetera, the guys that put them in a position to be where they are because they were worried about the future of the program, not just the current state of the program. And Rhule wants the athletic department to be that in the future. Rhule wants coaches and athletic directors, everybody 20 years from now, to look back at their tenure as the reason Nebraska is where it is and that they paved the way. And then those guys will recognize that, and they will then pass that down and do the same for the guys of the next 20 years. And it's trying to build, that momentum and continue to have a good culture and a positive direction of your athletic department as a whole. Matt Rhule did state, he said there isn't, and I want to quote this because, this is important. There isn't major problems. And when he said that still implies that there are some issues, and it might be not major problems because it probably doesn't affect the football team directly, but there are issues. And, he's not going to come out in his press conference and say that, because then, of course, that hurts the next athletic director that is to come on board. Like that, the optics of that are terrible. If you're telling potential athletic directors that there's issues within your athletic department, you're not really helping yourself out, because who's going to want to come here if you tell them there's issues, So, and then what kind of Rhule has been about this entire time was not worrying about the outside noise, what people are saying, the optics, the one score losses and stuff like that. And, you know, he just wants to focus on being the best. And he believes you can't focus on being the best if you're worried about that stuff. And he sees this as an unbelievable opportunity to be able to set the path forward, um, for what's best for the future. And, you know, he did say Trev was very key in that, and the vision, and preparing him and the university for some of the things like revenue sharing is one of the specific one he mentioned. And so he wants somebody in place that's going to be able to do the same thing, see things coming and be able to prepare in advance. So that way, when it does come, it's not one of those where they're scrambling to figure it out and making a lot of mistakes. It's one of those things that they have a plan in place. And when it happens, it's smooth. He talks about player development again, making this everything that Matt Rhule believes doesn't change with any of this. The foundation that he still wants to build is there. And he says investing is the only way to win. To get a return, you have to invest, and that goes for facilities, things for the fans, et cetera. All of that factors in. And he wants Nebraska to be the standard. He wants people to turn and look to Nebraska as the gold standard for how things should operate. He wants people to have to study Nebraska for how to build a good athletic department as a whole, not just for the football team, not just for the basketball team, but for the entirety of the university and everything and every person involved. But Nebraska, he says they're one of the best in the business as far as in the business of college. Little debt, one of the smallest debts in college football. They don't take student fees, they don't take money from the university. The financial models, great. But, they need a great vision moving forward, and they want, people that echo what he's preaching and what his foundation is and what his structure is and what he's always gotten, from his teams. And he wants that none of that to change, and for that to happen and for that to continue, of course, because he's had a couple year stops in each of those places. But for that to continue, he really wants to to look beyond that. He trusts his ability to rebuild this team, but he wants to look down the road, and he truly wants what's best for this university because, he wants to leave this place better than he found it. He wants to make sure that, his contribution to the athletic department and to Nebraska is, a one that was remembered for turning everything around, one that was remembered for picking Nebraska up out of the mud at the perfect time and reviving them and understanding that that was capable. He was capable of that, and we saw how many things failed. So now we know what to do right. And Matt Rhule has come in so far and showed us that what he's doing is quote unquote right because it's working. So he's right in his beliefs and he's right in his thought process of sticking with retention, because he talked about retention, before about the recruiting class. And he talked about retention here in terms of just retaining leadership, which again, fourth athletic director in, 13 years, that hasn't been there. And not only with the players does he want retention, but he wants retention with leadership, and he says the only way that you can develop is with retention. And that's right. Like the only way that leadership is going to develop to understand him and understand what makes Nebraska Nebraska, it's going to take time. So getting the right guy in there that's going to invest in the future is key, not the guy that's going to be able to come in and, leave in a couple of years for some more money. So hopefully they really do take that into account and get him involved in that. But you know, like you said, this happened. It is what it is. He appreciates Trev for everything he did, and we should appreciate what Trev did here, but we can also not agree with the way he left. And we can also have a negative opinion for that, but we have to admit that he did leave it in a better place than it was. And he did set a lot of this in motion. So but he is right. We need to move forward, get the vision going, the right direction and continue it going the right direction. Again, it's heading the right direction already. It's about keeping this momentum and, getting back to what he wants. He wants, to have the best player development in the country. He mentioned Devaney and Osborne, you know, 7 times in the first 10 minutes of the discussion, and talked about specifically the winter sports helping him in recruiting even because, they're talking about usually the other schools, Bama's and all that stuff. And, you know, people see what Nebraska is doing and it keeps Nebraska in the conversation and quote unquote relevant, as many people like to say we're irrelevant, but you can't argue the fact that right now Nebraska is more relevant than it has ever been. The baseball team is doing well. The basketball teams are doing great. The football team is on the up. Outside of this athletic director stuff, everything is still the same. And he's talking about how the impact it's having and how the impact of all of these teams performing well is having on the football team. And so that's another thing that, that needs to be pressed is that we need an athletic director that cares about the entirety of the athletic department and not just the football, that comes in and understands that these teams also add value, a lot of value, and especially when, look at the support for the men's basketball team right now. I mean, there's usually a lot of support, but, look at the support for the women's basketball team right now. Like these are things that boost the university up in the eyes of recruits when they come to these games to watch. It benefits. It's a snowball effect, and all this is a snowball effect. And that's the biggest thing that Rhule wants is to keep the snowball going, not have to melt it a little bit and then try to recover, at the bottom of the hill. So it's one of those things where we're in great shape. We're still in great hands. It happened, but we move forward. I am not really going to care to bash Trev. It does nothing for me. I've made my thoughts known on the whole thing, but I just don't think going after him on Twitter is really the answer. I get it. Again, we all have a right to our emotions and stuff like that, but I still think that time could have been used to really put the pressure and the heat more on the Board of Regents than already was with the entire fan base going after him instead of 75% going after Trev, and the other 25 going after the Board of Regents. So that's my thoughts on it. Again, I everybody has a right to their opinion, and your opinions, what the way you handle it is not wrong. It's just these are my thoughts on it, and I think I wasn't really. I don't know, man. I wasn't one of the doomsday guys when it happened. I was just kind of like, okay, like it is what it is. We move forward, and all we can do is just understand that we are in a position where we're rooting for our basketball team as the 8 seed in the NCAA tournament. So keep all those things in mind. Trev leaving doesn't change any of that, and we're in great shape. So, and again, apologies for the video issues this week and stuff like that. So, we will be moving the following weeks, next Tuesdays to Friday, but I will brush back over that on this Tuesday show and in the community. So stay tuned to the community tab on the channel page for updates and anything like that. But yeah, we're prepping for this coming one to be Tuesday at the normal time, and then we're moving the next weeks to Friday since I'll be out of town on Tuesday. So I appreciate everybody stopping in and joining me to hear me blab about my thoughts on the Rhule press conference, the Trev Alberts stuff, and this is just my official turning the page, and let's move forward to spring ball, and let's talk football, let's root for the basketball team, and let's have fun. It's been an emotional time, like I said, for the last few days for a lot of Husker fans, but now we cheer for the basketball team, and like Matt Rhule said, let's make it about the players, not about Trev Alberts. Let's root for the players. Let's not sit there and afterwards just be like, oh, Trev, all this other stuff. Let's give credit to the players. Let's use our platforms to boost them up and tweet about them in a positive way. So I think there's more benefit to everyone involved in the university if we are more positive about everything. So again, I'll shut up about it now, and I will see y'all tomorrow in the live stream. So everybody have a great day. Peace.